As part of your review for AP Psychology, one of the things you want to be familiar with are the various psychological perspectives. In looking at the various psychological perspectives, while there are anywhere between 5 and 10 that are theoretically out there, there are 5 main ones that you need to know. The first one is going to be biological, and this is looking at all behaviors, thoughts, and emotions, all explained by physical events in the nervous or endocrine systems. So we're not looking at thought process, we're not looking at external environment, we're strictly looking at what is going on literally, biologically, inside the human body. This can also include genetics, genetic predisposition toward any particular kinds of behavior. Also includes brain chemicals with neurotransmitters in the brain. It includes hormones with hormones in the bloodstream and the endocrine system. The cognitive perspective. Whether you're dealing with memory or problem solving or language, cognitive is where this is going to be. You recall that famous quote, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And so humans actively seek, evaluate, transform, and transmit information. So anytime you're posting something on Facebook, that's going to be cognitive. Should I post or should I not post? That's going to be cognitive. Should I take that picture to post? It's going to be cognitive. So it's the thought process that you've got. How do people acquire, store, process, and use information? So when we're looking at this one, we're looking at how do people deal with this? How do people acquire? How do they get information? How do they store it? Oh yeah, memory. How do they process information? And of course, how do they use it? How do they pull it back out of the long-term memory that they've got it in? So cognition includes not just thought process and problem solving, but also memory. An offshoot of cognitive is the idea of humanism. Sometimes it's called phenomenology. And so for this, reality is going to be different for each person. Depends on their own personal interpretation of any external event, but that interpretation is going to be based on the things, people, and events in his or her own life. So anytime you go into a particular class and you, along with your other classmates, experience a particular 50, 60, 100-minute class block or period, you are going to be experiencing something different than what the person next to you is experiencing. And that idea is called phenomenology because reality is going to be different for each person. The psychoanalytic perspective. That, of course, is going to be humans are born with instincts. That's going to be with the id, the life and death instincts, eros and thanatos, the sex and aggression instincts, the existence of the unconscious or the subconscious, depending on which source you're looking at. So when we're looking at the existence of the subconscious, we're looking at an aspect of ourselves that we cannot find and deal with directly. And that was a key Freudian idea. Psychoanalysis, the psychoanalytic perspective, contains the idea that childhood experiences determine adult personality through unconscious conflicts. This is a deterministic point of view, determinism. So your experiences determine your personality. They don't influence, they don't nudge, they don't do anything, but they determine. It is because of childhood experiences that we have our personalities. And then Freud says there are no accidents. There's always a reason for every behavior that we do. Sociocultural. Humans are strongly influenced by their social, cultural, and ethnic contexts. We cannot get away from our ethnicity, the culture that we were raised in, whether it is the language that we speak, the food that we ate, the value systems that we have, the marriage systems that we have. Whatever it is, we cannot get away from that. And that influences how we adapt and how we approach new particular problems. It also can include age. As a person my age, I guess I'm in middle age now, but I approach problems very different now as a person who's 49 than as I did when I was 19. Discrimination can also play a role as part of the sociocultural perspective in understanding why people do what they do. How do they react to the discrimination that they have experienced? How do they react to the discrimination that their group has or is currently experiencing. And then socioeconomic status. That plays a huge role in understanding aspects of people's lives. Decision-making in relation to economics, decision-making in relation to things. Very important to understand the social-cultural perspective includes the SES or socioeconomic status. Gender roles, males versus females. How does the male of the species understand the world? How does the female of the species understand the world? How do we as human beings understand the world differently as a result of being male and female? There is a distinct difference. Some of the differences are subtle, some of the differences are pretty major. But the fact is that when we generalize all human behavior, gender is one of the key things that differentiates us. The behavioral perspective, this goes back to Pavlov, Watson, B.F. Skinner. Most human behavior is learned through interaction with the environment. Once upon a time, this was called environmental determinism because they didn't believe in any kind of genetics or thought process going on. And so it was strictly what was the environment, what was the circumstance, what were the situations involved in that were the antecedents to this particular behavior when they were examining something. We learn to predict events, obtain what we want, and avoid what we don't want, according to this view. Again, it's all about the behaviors that we exhibit and the responses that we learn to expect. Humans are passive organisms who react to environmental stimuli according to this point of view. So we don't necessarily create our environments, as we would say in the cognitive or in the humanistic points of view, but we would react to the environment according to the behavioral view. And of course, we learn similarly to animals, because we are animals, through conditioning, whether it be classical conditioning or operant conditioning. And of course, consequences to external stimuli through the use of reward and punishment, the pleasant and unpleasant consequences that occur with our behavior. And of course, we can add Bandura in here with social cognitive theory, modeling and imitation. Learn by observing others. Someone out there is modeling a behavior, then we observe that behavior, and then we imitate that behavior. So with the perspectives, a lot of people say, well, why are there different ways of viewing people anyway? Well, each one gives us a different way to look at the same thing. Each gives us a different lens or a different filter to understand aspects of people's behavior. So when we have a filter on, that helps us understand maybe a different aspect of particular behaviors that people might have. Each gives us a different piece of the puzzle. We need different perspective, different points of view to understand human behavior. Because without those different kinds of views, we'll probably miss something, because we weren't thinking about all the different aspects of humanity and human behavior. So when you look at any behavior, we can look at cognitive and what are the thought process and problem solving of that individual. Psychodynamically, what are the unconscious influences? What are the childhood influences? Behavioral, what are the consequences? Has there been modeling and imitation going on? Biological, what's happening biologically? You know that when you're really, really hungry, your behavior gets different than when you are really full. So hormones play a role, neurotransmitters play a role. Socio-cultural, gender, ethnicity, etc. All of those play a role in understanding the point of view and the behavior that we've got at any point in time. And then finally, one term to throw back at you is eclectic or eclecticism. So when something is eclectic, it's pulling from a variety of different fields or a variety of different views, and that's what most psychologists use today. Most psychologists are not one particular perspective. They pull from a variety of perspectives. And so there you have it, a quick overview of psychological perspectives.